Everything you were taught about studying is a lie. Not an exaggeration, not clickbait, a documented, peer-reviewed, scientifically confirmed lie. And it's been quietly stealing years of your life while you sat there believing you were getting smarter. You highlighted, you reread, you made the flashcards, and still, the night before the exam, it felt like the information had never entered your brain at all. That's not your fault, but it is your problem. And in the next some minutes, I'm going to hand you the only learning method that has ever made a measurable, reproducible difference, used by Nobel Prize winners, self-made billionaires, and the students nobody saw coming. Stay with me, because the part that will actually change your life isn't the obvious part. Your brain is not a camera. It doesn't record what it sees. It's closer to a muscle, and like a muscle, it only grows under resistance. Every time you reread a page, your brain runs a shortcut. "I've seen this before" gets logged as "I know this." Scientists call it the fluency illusion, and it is the most dangerous trap in education because it feels exactly like learning while producing almost none of it. The Feynman Technique was built to destroy that illusion completely. Richard Feynman, Nobel laureate, safecracker, bongo player, the man Einstein called one of the most original minds of the 20th century, didn't discover a learning hack. He discovered a truth detector, a method so ruthless it exposes fake understanding in minutes. Here's what's at stake. Every hour you spend rereading is an hour you'll never get back, spent building a confidence that will collapse the moment it's tested. The Feynman Technique ends that permanently. But most people who try this technique make one fatal mistake within the first 5 minutes. I'll show you exactly what it is, and it's not what you'd expect. Take a blank page, write the concept at the top. Now close everything, notes, tabs, textbook, and explain it out loud, as if you're teaching a confused 12-year-old. Not summarizing, not reciting, explaining, the way you would to someone who will ask, "But why?" after every sentence. The second your explanation breaks down, the second you reach for a word and it isn't there, that gap is the entire lesson. Not the chapter, not the lecture. That specific moment of failure is where real learning begins. Feynman kept a notebook at MIT with a title that should be tattooed on every student's desk: "Things I Don't Know About." He didn't study to feel confident. He studied to find where his confidence was fake. That inversion alone separates elite learners from everyone else. In a moment, I'll show you the neuroscience behind why this works, and the findings are genuinely disturbing in the best possible way. When your brain is forced to generate information, not recognize it, but rebuild it from scratch, something measurable happens at the cellular level. Researchers call it the generation effect. It produces up to 50% stronger retention than passive review. Not 5%, not 10%, 50%. But this finding from Washington University is even more unsettling. Students who simply intended to teach material later before they taught a single person encoded it more deeply than students who studied to pass a test. The expectation of explanation rewires how memory forms. You don't even have to open your mouth. The intention alone changes the neurology. And Yale researchers confirmed what Feynman knew intuitively. People catastrophically overestimate how well they understand things. Ask an expert to explain how a zipper works, step by step, every mechanical detail. Watch certainty dissolve into silence. This is the illusion of explanatory depth, and it lives inside every subject you've ever studied, waiting to embarrass you at the worst possible moment. Now, here's the trap. Most people hear this and start summarizing their notes out loud and call it the Feynman Technique. That is not the Feynman Technique. That is rereading with your mouth open. Real application means pushing until your explanation breaks, until you hit the exact sentence you cannot finish. That breakdown is not a sign you're failing. It's the only sign that you're actually doing it. The question nobody asks is what happens in your brain after that breakdown. The answer changes everything. When Elon Musk was asked how he taught himself rocket science with zero aerospace training, he didn't mention textbooks. He described dismantling every concept down to first principles, fundamental truths that can't be broken further, then rebuilding the entire logic until he could explain every layer himself. That is the Feynman technique at full intensity.
The pattern is consistent among the highest performing minds across every field, not consuming more information, but stress testing understanding until the weak points scream. Cognitive scientist Robert Bjork calls this desirable difficulty, the counterintuitive truth that making learning harder in specific ways produces retention so superior it barely compares to conventional study. The best learners aren't the ones who absorb the most, they're the ones who find their gaps the fastest and refuse to paper over them with jargon. Now you understand the method. What I haven't told you yet is the one thing that makes this technique fail for most people, and it has nothing to do with effort. Imagine yourself 6 weeks from now. Same calendar, same 24 hours, but this time you finish a study session and you know it. Not because it felt familiar, but because you just rebuilt it from nothing and it held. No anxiety the night before, no collapse under pressure, just the quiet confidence of someone whose understanding has actually been tested. That is not a personality type, it's not a gift, it's a method. Here's your action step. 5 minutes, right now, tonight. Pick one concept from this week, close every note, write it out as if explaining to someone who's never encountered it. Write until your explanation breaks. The exact sentence where it breaks, underline it, circle it. That is your real lesson. That is where tomorrow starts. One concept, 5 minutes, the whole system working. Feynman said it himself. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Most people spend their entire education building a sophisticated system for fooling themselves faster. You just chose something different. One last thing, the Feynman Technique is the sharpest learning tool that exists, but there's a reason even people who know it still can't use it consistently. It's not discipline, it's not motivation, it's something happening in your brain before you even sit down to study, and it's quietly sabotaging everything. That's the next video.